So as Pat's already demonstrating, the different bands have different resistances. And every company has its own resistance. Absolutely, absolutely. So every single company is going to be slightly different. And that's kind of one of the things there. So with hers, she has it in her order there. And it's kind of similar here in this respect with what we have. And as you can see, ours are all coated. They have a cloth covering. A very good reason for that. All right? The band snaps, it stays within the cloth. So it's not going to snap back at somebody, because that's what's going to happen over time. The band's going to snap as it gets used so much, or there becomes like a little cut when it's wrapped around metal. So that's why it's always important to make sure, inspect the bands before you use them. Make sure that they're safe, there is no nicks in them, and you don't have any cuts or anything like that. And then the other thing too is over time they lose their elasticity. Replace them when that happens, because then it kind of affects the strength of them. So that's just one of the things there. I do have, and what I'll do, I can email this stuff to you if you want to submit, but TheraBand, which is one of the therapy sites that uses, it's a company that uses the bands, and it's a manufacturing company called TheraBand. What they do have is they have put together a conversion, approximate weight conversion. So based upon the color of the band and the percent elongation, will give you the approximate weight that you are lifting with that band. So if you're doing a yellow, so 0 elongation, meaning it's just at its normal length right here. 25% elongation, just slight, and that would be approximately about a 1.1 pound weight that you're lifting right there. So if you elongate it further, there you're getting a little more weight resistance. So it depends upon the color of the band. So you go from like a pound up to about 5.5 pounds with the yellow. For ours, it would probably be, the red one would be again 1.5 up to 7 pounds. And so that's going from 25% elongation up to 250% elongation. So taking this 250% longer than what it is right now.
How would you do that?
Well, that's again kind of goes with more of that style of a band that she has versus what we have, because that style, without having the cord, the material around it, allows for a little more elasticity. And
are those basically just these but cut?
Well, actually these are going to be more of an actual resistance band where it's a tube versus an actual flat band. So that also affects the effect of, what you're doing as well, because then that goes into the diameter, the thickness of the band.
Okay. When
So
you talk about elongation, that means like that one, that's like 100% right. It's just
So that would just be normal. So that's 0. That's 0. When it's not doing anything, that's 0. When you apply resistance, that's where you're getting that elongation there. So now when you take it here, so that would be 0. Applying that, now you're at a little almost over what it would be. So, the 50 is probably 75. And that's just not even half that band length right there. So that's what that's talking about there as far as that elongation is concerned when you're doing exercises with that. The other thing to keep in mind of is when you're doing stuff, you can use it around your own body. You can attach it to different objects to stabilize it. With some of the companies out there now, they make attachments that go right over the door. So then there's an anchor. So when you close the door, it anchors in. And then there's a loop. You put the band through the loop. So if you're doing stuff at home, that way you don't have to drill holes in the wall. Now to keep in mind, you want to make sure it's one of those doors that closes into you, not one that you push. Because when you push it and you anchor it, it's pulling that door away from the frame. Whereas if you have to close it towards you, you've got the frame. So then you're pulling it towards the frame, so it's not going to pull away from the door frame. So that's one of the things there to keep in mind of. The other thing that you can do too with some of the door handles, especially if you get like some of the French handles here, you can wrap it around a little bit easier. Or if you have a stationary object that's not going to move, loop it around a stationary object that is not going to move. So, in some cases, a heavy chair, a table is always fine, stuff like that, as long as it's not going to move on you. And that's why I always say, if any of those move, just use yourself. Wrap it around yourself and go that route instead. All right, so that's kind of there. The benefits of the bands is, as we all know, is just how adaptable they are. We use them for a whole bunch of different populations. Our relatively healthy people can use them. Our adapted populations uses them. And then I also suggest them for people who are traveling, because tuck them up. People who are strict on wanting to get their workouts in, tuck them up. They travel well, especially if you're on road trips, stuff like that. Just throw them in a bag, throw them in your car. You can also use them in your office, use them for different stretches, things along those lines. So that's what makes it a benefit for just about everybody using the band. Now, when we get into doing some of this stuff, because you can do whole body workouts with them in a small, short period of time. Incorporate several different exercises and just go right through them. So you can do total body, lower body, upper body. In some cases, you can start even doing single joint exercises with them as well, meaning just like a bicep, tricep work, where you're just moving one part of the body. So that's where kind of a universal aspect of them coming in. Now, as far as doing some of the stuff when it comes to, kind of go through some stuff here, for lower body work, what you can do, and I'll just kind of stay kind of fierce, that way people can see. So if you're wanting to have, incorporate doing a squat with them, you're just going to have to stand on the band itself and make sure that it is equal distance on your feet, so that we have an equal distance apart. And try and get it so that we have enough resistance where you're able to bring it up. So I always suggest with people when they're doing this, start with the lightest band possible to start with, because you're going to be pulling it up a good distance. And what you're going to notice when you're doing stuff with the bands is you're going to be going through, coming down, you're going to have resistance the whole movement pattern. Whereas with the weights, you have resistance for part of it because of gravity as well. Whereas with this, shorten the band, decreases the resistance, lengthen the band, increases that resistance. So you're still getting the benefit of it, and you want to make sure you're doing the proper form and technique the whole way through still. Right, so that's for part of the squat. So again, still lower body, and go within what your natural range of motion would be. I wouldn't expect somebody going through and doing this coming down into a deep form. Instead, and if that's not possible, let's try something else. One of the other things I always have people do, side steps with the bands. So here, holding the band up towards the waist, stepping off to the sides, and then back to the other way. All right, so with doing something like that, the other option is, when you're doing some of that, incorporating what we have are the loops, which is a little smaller version of this style of a band. So again, same concept, yellow, less resistance, green, slightly more, and then the red, heavy resistance with this type of a band. So this is going to be a little different than what is in, when I send it to Lena for the handout. So this one's going to offer a lot more weight. So I wouldn't suggest this for any beginner. I would probably tell you to stick with the yellow, and then what you're going to do, place this on so it wraps around, just stick your feet into it, and it wraps around your ankles. And that way you can kind of do your side steps off to each side. All right, the other thing you can do with these as well is stepping backwards. So stepping back one way, that way you're getting that backwards resistance. What we classify as more of doing a hip extension when you step back, hip flexion coming forward. So you're stepping back, incorporating the posterior, more of the glutes and the hamstring, when you step back with that with the resistance. And that's where using this. The other thing that you can do is if you have a sturdy surface, a sturdy point that this attaches to, loop it around, so that way, and then loop it around your leg. That way you can step back in that respect as well. But it has to be a stable, sturdy surface. All right, any questions on that part? So when you're doing these, just to kind of give you a better idea, because I see a couple of kind of blank, kind of like, okay. just wrapping these around. So what I always tell people, make sure you sit down first, put this around your ankles. Don't try to do it while you're standing up. So when you're doing that, always, like I said, sit down. That way you don't have to worry about losing your balance. Place it around the one, and then place it around your other ankle. And once you get it placed, get yourself in position here. So let me come over here, the chair a little bit for you.
I'm on
So-
the other side of the table.
Which is kind of an odd placement here. So as you're doing these, like I said, when you're doing the side step, the band is applying the resistance coming off to the side, so you get their whole resistance around the ankle. Now coming back, stepping back there, so that way you get that resistance coming backwards. Same thing, get that resistance coming forwards here and coming back. So that way you're getting a full lower body circuit there. So you get 3 exercises right there. All right, so that way you're getting the sides, the outside of your hips, the front of your thigh, and the back of your hip and glutes, all right there and within a short period of time. The other thing that you can also do with these is some people will try to walk with them. I don't suggest that if you don't have the balance. Just do, and if you need to, place the hand on the wall, side step out this way as well. That way you've got that balance taken care of. Stepping back, and then again stepping forward. So that way you've got something here to support and balance. All right, any questions for that part there is the lower body. And those are just a few as far as some of the basic stuff there. Some of the more complex ones, I would suggest coming up and having us go through that with you. That way you're not compromising on your form. So again, that's just for the lower body stuff. There's also a couple others in there that I'm not going to go over. Just from the standpoint, it requires a little more coordination, and I don't want to put anybody in jeopardy there. All right, so for upper body, if you're wanting to incorporate like a chest press and you don't have a sturdy object to attach this to, wrap it around so that way it kind of goes around your body, right underneath the armpits. All right, and then make sure you have enough resistance, so you choke up on the band a bit, have enough resistance to press forward and coming back. So that way you're doing the press that way. All right, the other option that some people can do is you cross it over, so now you get kind of a pulling effect with that as well. But I would just suggest starting and pressing out here. And that way, like I said, choke up on that, so that way you get enough resistance starting out and pressing forward. All right, next one that you can go into doing would be a row, upright row. So from there, again, step on the band as if you're just stepping on it like I was showing you earlier. Stand up tall, shoulders back. As you're doing this, bring the bands up towards the shoulders, elbows up, and come back down. So up towards the rib cage. So up towards the ribs and come back down. So that way you're getting more of the upper body, upper back, which is a critical component of doing this, especially since a lot of people are in a desk position around the computers here. Get those shoulders back, pulling up with the resistance to kind of help with strengthening the upper back a little bit. Next one from there, what we suggest a lot of people doing, called band pull apart. Start out so that way the band is just nice and lax. Wrap your hand around it so that way there's some give in the beginning. Pull apart all the way across and bring it forward. And as you're doing that, you're contracting the scapula, making sure the shoulder blades are back. Shoulders are back at all times as you're doing this. And no nice, slow, controlled movement. So having a slight bend in the elbows is fine, but you want this to kind of come across so it stays even towards the collarbones. So that way the band is almost touching the collarbones a little bit, and then come forward. And that way it's going to kind of help keep those shoulders back. All right, and helps improve the posture and incorporating that strength in the upper back that we all need. All right, so any questions on some of that so far? Yes,
When
Kat?
you're doing these, Nikki, how many,
repetitive. Like
Well, if you're just starting out, I wouldn't do any more than 10 to start with. Do one set of 10 to start with.
Okay.
Once you've gone through and done these several times, then you can start adding a second set and eventually add a third set. But I wouldn't have you do any more than 2 to 3 days of this a week. All right, so you don't want to do the same thing over and over and over. Just do it no more than about 3 times a week. That's it. All right, so if you want to do something every single day, do a lower body routine one day, upper body routine another day. So that way you're mixing it up and you're not doing the same thing over and over. And then also too is mix up the exercises. So that way you're only doing like 4 at a time. You don't want to do a whole lot to begin with. And then gradually build upon that as your body adjusts to it. All right, so another one that you can do, shoulder press. Again, and this one you're going to want to do single arm unless you have a long enough band. Step on it with one foot. Again, stand up tall. Start out so that way the hand is slightly higher than the shoulder. And then the elbow is going to be slightly lower than the shoulder. So it's not going to be above the shoulder when you're starting. It's not going to be too low. So that way you're almost trying to create a 90-degree angle within the elbow and the armpit. And then you're going to press straight up and come right back down. So as you're doing this, it should be a straight line coming up. It should not be coming forward. It should not be coming back. So it should just be a nice, smooth movement coming up and then coming down. All right, so that way you're not coming in, you're not coming out, you're not doing any rotation here. It just stays in that stationary plane, just up and down. Does that make sense? All right, so those are some things there that are easy enough to do. Going into doing, and those are all kind of multi-joint, where you get either shoulder and elbow involved, get the hip and knee involved, and that way you cover more parts of the body in that respect there. Another thing that you can do if you really want to kind of do some of the arms, bicep. Keep that elbow by the side. Just bring that hand up towards the shoulder, not the shoulder to the hand. So the hand comes up to the shoulder. If you want to do the tricep, kind of get yourself back into a similar, let me get to the side here. So as you're doing this, get the elbow up so that way the hand is back by your shoulders. And then what you're going to do, just extend that elbow up this way. So you're just extending and straightening the arm to target the tricep muscle here. That way you have resistance throughout the whole movement pattern. All right, so those are several that are relatively easy. Now if you struggle with shoulder, you can't get the arm up. Alternative for the shoulder and arms, front raise, just bringing a band up so you're still stepping on it, applying that resistance. And then the side raise, so you're just coming right up to the side, just the shoulder height. Palm is facing down. So then just coming up in front of the shoulder and up to the side of the shoulder. All right, any questions on those ones? All right, who wants to kind of come up and try some of it? Anybody? Nobody?
Go ahead, Ben.
Do it around.
Yeah, we
Don't
should.
go up. Just, yeah.
Yeah, so if you guys want to, by all means, come around, go ahead and play around with these a little bit and figure out what you want to do. And then if you have questions on any of these, by all means, let us know, because we can go over some more stuff as well that's a little more in-depth on a one-on-one basis once we know people have a better idea as to what you're doing. I'm not going to go through some of the complex ones with you on this, just from the standpoint I don't want anybody to try and do some of this stuff at home and be like, well, I can't do it. So, yes.
You demonstrate on the circular one an upper body move.
Absolutely. So with this one, what you can do, kind of similar to what we did with like the pull apart, placing it right around the hand, outside of part of the hand, so it comes through and you're holding onto it with a thumb, just pulling apart, and it's not going to come as far apart as the other one will, but you still have that resistance coming apart here. All right, the other one that you can do with this, and more in a seated position, still kind of incorporating a bicep, where you're just holding one part of it down, the other part coming up across the body here. So with yours, it'll be a little bit easier because you've got a little bit longer. band there. So you can do it in a standing. You can do it in a standing. So where what you can do is actually place it down towards your foot and then pull up. So if you're seated.
Oh, seated.
Yeah. Sorry about that. So if you're seated, because with you having a longer one there, and then sit up tall, sit up tall.
Whoops. It's rolled.
It does that. They'll do that.
They'll do that and that's
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
All right. So, okay, shoulders back.
I think we need to wear safety glasses.
I know, I'm picturing funniest home videos with some of these
Yeah.
things. I'm thinking,
And that's why I'm more of a fan of this style.
I get it.
So because I have seen that happen,
Yeah.
and where it's snapped and snapped back, and it hurts because it's at, especially when it's at full tension.
A giant rubber band.
Yeah.
It is absolutely. That's exactly what it's like, as a giant rubber band. All right, so that's one of the things there that you can do. Get people to kind of help loosen up, get the shoulders going up above the head, and trying to separate up top, and to get that movement going up top as well if they're able to. So that way, as you're doing that, you're kind of creating this movement coming down and keeping those shoulders back the whole time. Just going through that. So with these ones, they're not as long as what you have. So they're more meant for like the shorter distance, or for the lower body where you have a little bit more strength compared to upper body. So that's where these ones are a little different than that style. All right, and then the other thing too, some people will place these on their knees, and when they're laying down, and do kind of like a bridge work, open and close the hips around the knees. With that one, it's kind of more of a specialized, because then you're getting, especially bring the hips up, knees bent, kind of going into a bridge, open, close, kind of like a clamshell movement. So again, that's something that we could do upstairs, demonstrate upstairs for you, where it's a little more comfortable on a mat versus laying on a solid surface. All right? So with some of that, it's just important to make sure form and technique, as with anything. And any type of lift movement you do, it's always shoulders back. All right? So then the shoulders and the hips should be in the same movement pattern. Should never do a movement where you have to bend at the waist. All right? So especially with the squat movement pattern, the movement, you're bringing those hips back, coming down, coming up with keeping a neutral spine. You don't want to shift the shoulders forward. So when you're doing some of that stuff, just make sure proper body position. All right, if you want to, come on up, talk to us. We'll help you make sure that you're in a proper alignment before you start doing some of this stuff. That way you're not putting yourself in jeopardy. All right, any questions?
Are there any core exercises you can do?
Absolutely, absolutely. Some of the things that is beneficial is if you have a partner, or if you have it attached to something where it's attached to one end. I don't have anything at the right height, but then kind of doing a rotation. So you're rotating away from the resistance, and then have it on the other side to incorporate the rotation this way. Does that make sense there? So that way, if the resistance, if someone's holding it over here, you're pulling away from it, and kind of getting that rotation work here. So that as you're holding on to it, you always want to make sure shoulders back again, arms are going to be right in front of you, kind of doing a rotation work this way as if the band was being held over here.
Want me to hold it for you?
Sure.
Or with that doorknob?
No, not the right height.
Okay.
So you want this so that way as you're holding it right there, so what I'm doing is I'm just holding on to this. So as you can see, hands are together. It's not one on top of the other. And then rotating away from the resistance. As you're doing that movement, yeah.
She doesn't look very stationary.
Slightly bend your knees and have one foot in front of the other for a stagger. There you go. There you go, and bring those hips back slightly. There. Now she's going to be a little more stable that way. So as you're doing this, you're rotating away from the movement, getting some of that core work there. So that's one of the best ones that you can do with this. And then not only am I getting a benefit, she's getting a benefit with it.
I'm doing a squat.
So yeah, absolutely. We're doing the upright row is going to help with that. The other thing that you can incorporate was part of the back too, if you want to come up one more time. So then doing Just like that, yep. Upright row here, so you're doing upright row, now you're doing just a standard row, pulling back. And as you're pulling back, you're bringing your shoulders back towards, together, and bringing the elbows back. That way you're getting that upper back there. All right, so that way again, you want to make sure that this is about waist height for you. So with each person being different, that's why I said a doorknob's not going to be the best. So if you have an anchor where you can slide it in the door that way and do it in that respect, because that way it slides up and down for you. The other thing you can do is kind of a modification of a lat pull down. So kind of what I was trying to show with that. Start out with some resistance up top and then pulling down towards you in front, towards your collarbone, coming back up. So that way you're getting that resistance is coming down. So you're separating out. All right, so it's kind of a little bit different than that pull apart here, but now you're starting up top and you get that resistance to come down. And that way you're separating out. So those are the ones you can do for some of the upper back stuff to get the shoulders back, strengthen that upper back a bit for you. All right, anything else? Am I missing anything that anybody was kind of hoping to get? All right. If you don't have any questions, I think that would be it then, because I think I've pretty much covered everything I can cover with these without having you guys come up and do more.
Come up and make a house call. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, thank you.
Do you recommend a certain brand of band?
Not necessarily, because every
What, like at a Dick's Sporting Good or?
Dick's Sporting Goods has them, absolutely. Walmart carries them, Target carries them. My only suggestion is, if you're going to be getting some, either A, get the enclosed ones. Otherwise, if you're getting the other ones, make sure you check them out before you use them every time to make sure there's no nicks, no cuts, stuff like that in them. Because otherwise, if you start getting it's just like a rubber band, you get a cut in it and you pull it apart, you're pulling that cut more. So then it is going to snap sooner. Then like I was telling Pat, especially if you're sweating and you use them quite a bit and you sweat, put a light dusting of powder on it, like a talcum powder, baby powder, something like that, because then that kind of helps absorb that sweat. So and it kind of, because when you get them, they already have a light powder substance on them when you first pull them out of the package. So then by doing that, it keeps them from sticking together too, because they're latex. Now, people who have latex allergies, getting something like this style would be a better alternative, because then you don't have to touch the latex part here. You're just holding the handles, which is a solid PVC plastic, and then the cloth, and then you're holding this part here. So that way you can avoid people who have latex allergies. So that's the other thing to keep in mind of too. All right? Anything else? All right.
Thank you.